I was actually in a race against time. I had been injured while in the Air Force, and the injuries, I knew I needed surgery. I needed surgery on my neck and my lower back. Anyway, and I discovered that I had a penchant for the stage, for acting at a community theater in Sandusky, Ohio. And I don't know, I knew that if I could get in with somebody that, was producing projects, like a Scorsese or somebody, Kubrick or just a De Palma, somebody that had a future, that is just so talented as a filmmaker. I knew that I would be able to make a living as an actor. So my wife and I, we moved up to New York City, and man, I'll tell you, we lived in the underbelly, of things. It's but I went to school, and like I said, I was in this race, man. I was like, if I can just get in with somebody, maybe then I can get the surgeries, because I knew that I was probably going to need spinal fusions. It was that bad. I would have, I would have a few good days, and then I would be crippled up. I had to be very careful what I did all the time. I didn't know anything about, the fact that, with degenerative disc disease after you get injured, that what was coming. I didn't know enough about that. Nobody, I don't know. I suppose I should have done my research. I don't know. Well, I mean, there was a point where, I just succumbed to the injuries. And I had to have the surgeries. The VA, I went there and they turned me away. I was in a desperate situation. But I wanted to share something of what happened. I was working at this theater, the American Theater of Actors, off of West 54th Street. This is an off Broadway theater, but it's like the oldest off Broadway theater in Manhattan. And I was introduced. I had this interview with Jim Jennings, and he was talking about how he was friends with Robert De Niro, and that he had directed Harvey Keitel, and he had gotten Al Pacino his first agent, and there were all these names, people that had been gone through this theater, this theater off of West 54th Street. And I said, I thought to myself, even though there was a portent in the waiting room, this guy came out of talking to him and said, "Get the fuck out of here, man. You don't want nothing to do with, being here. Don't waste your time here." God was trying to help me. You know what I mean? I might have been able to get in with somebody. But you see, I didn't, the way it worked is Jim, I didn't have money for itineraries. At that point, we had lived in Manhattan and Queens and then Jersey City. And just, the PATH train, I couldn't afford to, if I got in a production, in a play, I had to go to rehearsals and what have you. So Jim, he gave me, work there at the theater to sweep and mop up, clean the restrooms and stuff like that. So one day I'm mopping up, and there are rehearsal rooms within this building. Also, he rented out part of the space for like the Midtown New York City Police Department. They were within the same building, and Jim rented that out to them, and that helped cover his expenses, what have you, with what he was doing. being the director, the owner of the American Theater of Actors. One day, I was outside of this rehearsal room. I had my mop bucket and, my broom and mop, what have you. And I opened up the door, and when I opened it up, there were these tables set up like in an L, half of the space within this. It was a big, big rehearsal room. And it was set up, there were all these people sitting behind these. They set up these tables and chairs behind the tables, and here was a casting call for a musical, a Broadway musical. And I had gone to school at the American Academy of Dramatic Art, and my penchant was dramatic acting, but I loved musical theater, and I would sing all the time, right along the Van Wyck Expressway in the mornings, and I used to really do a lot of singing. And I set my mop and all of that stuff outside of the door, and I said, "Can I audition?" No kidding. And the company, they're looking at me. They're like, "Come on, everyone's in agreement. Come on, it's all right." I step in there and I did a piece from Big Country. I think that's the name of the musical. But I did both of the parts in this duet. Both the tenor and the, what's that when you have a baritone? Did both of them, And, man, the room was lit up. It was lit up, in the spirit. And they said, "You are exactly who we're looking for." And they said, we have a musical we're going to put up. And it's about this mixed couple. And they were, I'm telling you the truth, they were blown away. And they're like, "There are two principal roles. And we want to cast you for one of them." So, of course, when I went back to my apartment where my wife and I lived in Jersey City, I called my mom and my dad and called my art instructor from high school, one of my mentors, and another mentor that I had, and a close friend of mine, Ernie Johnson, and of course, why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? With news like that. Called my aunt. Called a few friends. And couldn't help but tell them I just got cast as a principal in a Broadway musical. I'll tell you, man, it was, I'd had something like that happen to me. Something else too. But this one, that was something so special. Well, the musical never got off the ground. They never got the money that they needed to put it up. It was called The Forbidden Fruit. I don't know whatever happened to it. But they had a company, and they were going, full throttle, casting and everything. Then it just fell apart. But I could sing, and being a disabled veteran, not having access to dental care and everything, my teeth started really giving me a lot of problems 20 years ago. Anyway, and I lost, my, it's kind of hard to sing when you only have a few teeth in your skull. But I used to love to sing, and I was given a talent. And really something. Wonder how that would have went. I don't know, because like I said, I needed the spinal fusions. Ultimately, I did get them, but it wasn't through the VA. I had waited too long, the surgeon told me, and I developed scar tissue on my thecal sac. That's like the protective sheath that your spinal cord is in. Our spinal cords are in. Waited too long. all that rubbing from the impingement, from the discs that were bad, bulging out, herniating out, what have you. You know what a herniation is? A bulging disc. A bulging disc is a herniation. The insurance companies, everybody's got a way that they try to wheedle their way out of money. Once you've got injuries to your spine like that, to your intervertebral discs, if they are bulging out, herniating out, you're in trouble. You're in trouble, man. And if you can combat it with diet and what have you. I mean, my diet sucked. My wife and I, we didn't know anything. I mean, we were just scraping by. Sometimes, I mean, it was tough. Thank God we were able to, we didn't starve or I'm saying we made it, but there wasn't anything like where we could organize, where we could buy foods that were like, superfoods, anything that would help to slow down the degenerative process, like when your discs, like that disease. But, man, that was so freaking cool. It seems like it was just yesterday, and it literally was 30 years ago. It was 30 fucking 1 years ago. It was that long ago. It's really hard to believe. I love George Benson though, man. Wow. Yeah.